free audio post-production. Biophonic.com.
Hello, I am Kevin Anderson.
And I'm Adam Okada.
And we are clinical educators and hosts of the Ask the Educator podcast, brought to you by Healthmark, a Getting a company.
Are you a sterile processing technician, infection preventionist, or biomedical engineer? No matter your role, if you're involved in medical device processing, this podcast is for you. Our goal is to equip you with the knowledge and tools for excellence in medical device processing.
Now let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. This is Kevin, your host. Along with us is Adam, my co-host, as always. And joining us as our special guest for this episode is our very own Ron Hunsucker. So Ron is sort of new to our clinical affairs team-ish anyway, but he's been repping Healthmark for a very long time and also worked in the SPD department as well, right, Ron? Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, I did 20 years in SPD, and the last 10 I was up in the OR as well. So I got best of both worlds.
Excellent. Yeah. So that actually reminds me, our topic for this podcast, we're going to actually be talking about that SPD and OR relationship, which of course is also near and dear to my heart based on my background. So I'm excited to get into this one, Ron. And it's cool, I think, for people who have experience in both worlds to kind of get into this and share their experience and some of the lessons learned and things like that. So just getting right into the subject matter, though, why is it that the SPD and OR relationship is so vital and yet often one that is so challenging?
Well, first off, you can't do one without the other, period. Second off is one doesn't know what the other one's doing. Okay. Very few SPD techs knows what an aseptic technique is. Very few OR techs know what all the charting and records that we have to keep down in sterile processing and all the steps it takes to properly clean an instrument. A lot of them were trained old school. I was trained old school. We got any kind of brush we could find and we cleaned it. And there were no IFUs. There were no specialty detergents or anything like that. But times have changed and people have to learn to change with it.
That's a great point. And I think, there is that lack of understanding of the other one's roles, right? I mean, that's where you heard the nicknames, and I'm going to say the unpleasant nicknames we're not supposed to say, but the stupid people downstairs, the glorified dishwashers, all those kinds of things. I know we're not supposed to say that kind of stuff, but have you heard of stories of the SPD and the OR having problems with each other? I know I've experienced it myself, but do you have any good stories about that?
Oh, I don't ever remember being called up to the OR and explain to a doctor why the instrument the OR tech had and was bent. No, never. Yeah. And it really surprised me, 20 years in sterile processing and then moving up to the OR and seeing people, SPD is when we do an instrument set, we're very OR friendly. They don't know that. We try to set it up nice and orderly for them to find stuff. And when the container sets came out, people were carrying them by the handle sideways, and I'd see them walking down the hall swinging the container, and my eyes would burst out of my head, and I'd have to explain to them, we spent a lot of time making that perfect for you, and you're messing it up. So if any of the instruments are damaged, you did it. But it's a matter of education and cross training. I believe very much in cross training. When I got to be in the OR, I got to say, you get 2 weeks down on SPD, buddy, and because it really makes them appreciate what they have to do. And at the same time, you know what? While you're downstairs, I'm going to send one of my people from SPD up here to the OR so they can see what you guys have to go through. Because if you've never had to turn over a room in 5 seconds, it's literally impossible, but they want you to do it in 5 seconds. It can be a pain. There's a lot of draping there. I mean, there's so much in an OR case. SPD doesn't understand that. Just like OR doesn't understand all the stuff SPD has to do as well. So there have been many stories, but them carrying those trays sideways just about blew me out of the water. And, some of them were scope trays, laparoscopes, arthroscopes. Those are very delicate instruments. They don't get it, but it's just the lack of training and understanding. So teaching is happening every day. And if somebody doesn't understand what's going on, you should explain it to them. I had nurses in the OR that would, somebody put this pill pack together wrong. When I tried to open it, it tore. They didn't know that they had to pop those little two tabs on the end to open it properly to present aseptically to the tech to take out of it. They just accidentally tore it because they didn't know. But that's the whole point. They didn't know. So.
Yeah, this is so true. And, over the years, if you work in both areas, the stories do accumulate. And to your point, when it comes to not understanding each other's roles and what's going on, it's so true. I remember coming in on call to do an orthopedic case and found out the implants. The implant tray was not ready, or maybe it had a hole in it. Yeah, I think the tray, actually, the wrap had a hole in it. And that was a one-of-a-kind tray. And so we were then trying to figure out, how are we going to get this thing ready? And there was one sterile processing person there on this weekend shift. And they were like, well, that's fine. You can do that, but you got to wait for the results of the BI. And if you don't get the results of the BI, then they have to sign this early release form. And they just started explaining that to me. And I'm like, my head was spinning. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. What is a BI? What is an early release form? And this was back when the BIs that we had were 3 hours. So when she talked about the early release form, I'm like, well, how long does this BI thing take? Oh, 3 hours. And I'm like, oh gosh, like no doctor is going to want to wait that long, especially when they came in on call to do this trauma case. So all that to say, your point about us not knowing each other's roles or processes or any of that is so, so true. And part of the solution, to the problems that exist between OR and SPD is that walking a mile in the other's shoes. And I love to hear you say that, when you had the chance and you had the authority, you made it part of the program to work for 2 weeks in SPD. And I mean, not even just a day, right? You went as far as doing 2 weeks. And I think that's incredible. I wish that everybody would just do that like it was a requirement across the board. So hopefully in your experience, you might have seen some success stories or heard of some success stories between the OR and SPD. Has that ever happened to you? And can you kind of give us some insight into what that looked like from your point of view?
Well, what I found out is, I'm all about team when it comes to, because a hospital is one big team. I mean, everybody from environmental services to plan ops, we're all one big team and we're all there for one reason, and that's patient care. And I've touted that for 45 years. Is that how long I've been doing this? Ooh. Okay. So, and when I did that in the OR that I was in, and when I've suggested that at other, because I've been a consultant as well, when I've suggested that at other ORs and sterile processings, it's been very successful. It makes a big difference when an OR tech or SPD tech gets a tray downstairs and doesn't have to search for knife blades and Steinman pins and cable, anything that they can get punctured with, for one, and also separation of dirty and clean, instead of everything in a basin with bloody water in it, which is what we used to get, Kevin. You know this. Adam, you know this. That's the way we used to get it. We'd have the hand pieces, the pneumatics and the electrics would be in with the instruments, and
I used to send it down like that. Just saying. I was one of the culprits, so I'll admit that.
But you didn't know. Right. You didn't know. And the more people know what other people do and the processes they have to go through, is a better understanding you're going to get, and you'll get more cooperation. And I've seen it work, but it takes teamwork, and everybody's got to be on the same page and realize that they're there for One reason only: the patients. Period. If you're there to make a buck, go to HEB. I mean, go to Bill Miller's. Do y'all have a Bill Miller's? Uh, taco smell.
Yeah, taco smell. I don't know Bill Miller, but yeah, I know Taco Bell. I mean, yeah, Taco Bell. Yeah,
I almost got you to say it again.
Yeah, you did.
Well, that's what we call it down here in Texas. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the whole key is working together and making everybody or helping everybody understand what the other person is doing. You know,
what do you think is the key to improving that relationship? Because I've been a part of ORs and SPDs that were, let's say, at odds with one another. I don't want to say they hated each other, but there was loud conversations happening. If there was communication, it was usually somebody being angry at somebody else. So if you're in a situation like that, and somebody out there might be listening and maybe in a situation where that OR SPD relationship is broken or flawed, how can they start to improve it? I think walking a mile in each other's shoes is a good start. Is there anything else they can do to help?
Well, when you're the one that gets called into the room, and the reason you got called is it's either the surgeon or the OR tech blames something on you, right? Oh, it's those SPD people. We've all heard it. Listen to what's going on. And then when you answer, the surgeon says, sir, I will get together with the technician at the end of this case and we'll work on whatever the problem is, but it's got to be working together to make a solution. It can't be, okay, sir, I'll take care of it. It's got to be working together. Because if you try to do something by yourself, you're not going to get all in, and actually creating a team, a multidisciplinary team within the peri-op services period makes a big difference, because you get feedback, but not from the managers, not from the supervisors, but from the people that are actually in the room or taking the guff, the techs, the nurses, the circulators that have to run to the room to get something that they have to pop open for a case. You have to have buy-in from everybody. It can't be just, well, the manager says we got to do this now. That's not, if you make it theirs, just if they're part of the decision, basically doing a gap analysis, right? Figure out what the problem is, create a team, and come up with a solution, then study your solution later. Did it work or not? And if not, then get that team back together again and do it again. But it's creating a team and not just making it managers and supervisors. It's got to be the people that are actually in the room washing the dishes or handing over the instruments or whatever. So it's got to be team, period.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, Ron. And I'll just share some examples that I've used that I think work, at least in terms of examples of exactly what you're saying. So one of the things that I found that was really important, yeah, we're there for the patient and no one would ever say otherwise. But the one way with SPD that is unique is that in order to be there for the patient, you have to kind of obsess about your surgeons and your OR teams, meaning they're your more direct customer and they're the ones who are going to provide the feedback on how to get better. And so, like, for example, one day I'm attending the OR meeting, but at this point in my career, I was the SPD manager. And I'm like, hey, we've done all this stuff. We've been communicating with you and improving here, improving that, and sharing that with you along the way. What else can we do for you? And then one of my former scrub tech friends piped up and he's like, well, when are you going to take care of the missing instrument problem? And at the time, I didn't even know it was a really big problem. It was an honest blind spot in our program. And I was like, that's a great question. I didn't realize it was such a big problem. And he told me, the latest example of what happened. And so I went back to our department, reported to our team. We ran a report on missing instruments, and we set up a process to take care of missing instruments over the next year, 2 years or whatever. And we just stuck to that and kept reporting out to the OR where we were at in our progress, and things were getting better and better. So I think those are the things that really go a long way. And then you listen to the problem, you address the problem, and then you communicate back where you're at on that problem, and try to make sure that they know that you care about the issues that they're running into. And I think you could say the same, vice versa for SPD, and do something, OR could do better at point of use. You already mentioned that as a common issue, and that's something that OR could do better at. So I think those are two really sort of concrete examples that go well with that. But that being said, what kind of other final thoughts or additional recommendations would you provide to our listeners along this important topic?
Well, you were saying that you would go to the OR meeting, right, as an SPD manager. And that's what I did too, right? Yep. But instead of whenever we had celebrations and meetings like that, it should be intradepartmental. I mean, both departments come together. Like when the reps would bring lunches for OR, they'd spend hundreds of dollars, and SPD wouldn't see any of it. And the same thing for SPD. When the reps brought this, whenever that happened, we all got together as one unit. And, people eating together and BSing together, it creates a friendship. I mean, just like us, like our team, we do stuff together. And that's why we've all become great friends. Well, except for maybe Sharon. No, I'm kidding. he's that's my little buddy. I shouldn't pick on my little buddy that way.
Yeah.
But it's bringing them together as one big unit, like instead of just one person going or changing up the, because a lot of times day shift, there's only one person downstairs till like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock when the trays start coming down. Then you start trickling in, and sometimes we'll do multi shifts just to handle all the trays that we were going to get after 2 or whatever. But then you would let somebody else go to the meeting. If everybody couldn't go, then you would send somebody else so they could be an advocate. But, and then come back and tell her, like you said, Kevin, come back and give feedback. Where can we fix this? But I would also include an OR tech. I would also include a nurse. I mean, like I said, a multidisciplinary team coming up with a solution and making the solution happen. If they own it, they make it better, but they have to own it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And again, communication really is the key to any great relationship, that both sides have to be aware of what the other side is doing and appreciate what the other side is doing, and then work together to solve problems. That's the whole point of a team. So great advice. Cowboy of Clean, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, partners. See y'all soon.
All opinions expressed on this episode are those of the presenters. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Before using any medical device, it's important to review the manufacturer's instructions for use and consult with a professional.
For any questions or feedback, please reach out to us at asktheeducator@hmark.com.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.